In the last episode, I talked about the point in the story where my girl told me that she had a 4-year-old son and she had a freak out and convinced me that she was gonna kill the baby or go back to her hometown and not let me see the baby. After we had concluded that night, I assured her everything's going to be okay and that I understand she's going through a lot and that is a heavy situation. So the next day, she had to go to the doctor. Yeah, the next day she was going to go to the doctor. Before she went, she was taking a nap and I wanted to find a good doctor for us to get to know that will deliver our baby. And my buddy Miguel said that he had a doctor in San Jose, which is 90 minutes away, that he delivered his first son. And this is where he goes. He actually had just come from the doctor and sent us a picture of the ultrasound, the baby. And I had him pull a few strings for me and set up an appointment for me and my girl to go there and get an ultrasound. And I was going to make a whole weekend out of it. So this is Monday. On Friday, we were going to go to this doctor and we were going to get a hotel room and celebrate. And I was going to take us to a nice dinner, maybe a little shopping, get our first baby clothes or baby supplies or whatever. And I had spoke to my parents about the news that she had a 4-year-old son. And they shared with me her perspective of, what it's like to be in her shoes. And I was only thinking about myself. And I reflected on what they shared with me. And I told her that we would bring her son into Hako and it's going to take us some time to figure it out, but I would be happy to be a whole family. And so I told her I wasn't going anywhere. And if something happens with our baby, I'm not going anywhere. We're in it together. And she felt assured and good. And she went to the doctor for her checkup. And she had gone there alone because it was just the initial consultation. And the doctor said that her heart rate was high and that they were going to do a bunch of tests. She came back with the report and I looked at the tests that they were going to take. And, if a high heart rate was something normal for a woman this far along in a pregnancy, and spoke with my mom and she assured me that all that stuff is normal. The tests that they were going to take were the tests that you would take with a woman who's 14, maybe 15 weeks pregnant at this point. And so the next couple days were great. We were back in the zone. Everything was awesome. And we go to get the blood tests a couple days later. It was 2 days later. And when they did the blood tests on her first arm, they missed the vein and it hurt. And I was not too happy about that. But everything was fine. And then the next day, we went to go get the results. And I took the morning off and I had a really big presentation. I was doing the workflow workshop for a joint venture partner that I had that had 220, 230 people signed up for it. So I wanted to spend our morning getting the results and then I would do my presentation. It was going to be a great day. So I thought. And it ended up being maybe one of the worst days of my life. Going to the doctor was nerve-wracking. We were both really nervous. just because there was a lot at stake here. And again, there was nothing more that I wanted in the world than just to have a healthy baby and a healthy family. I wanted to make sure she was okay, and I wanted to make sure that the baby was okay. And we're just going through the steps, and just the feeling of like just not being in control. Like you just have to surrender to whatever the circumstances. It was hard. And we went in courageously, nevertheless. And the doctor brought her in and not me. And I was like, again, I'm in a foreign country. I don't know what's normal, but I do know what I want. And so I wanted to be in that room. And so the doctor took her for maybe a minute or two and then brought me in. And so the doctor is sitting there and he's looking at the results, and he said, her heart rate is high, and I can't remember what hormone it was, but it was elevated and it was high. And he was concerned about it. And I said to him, I'm like, I mean, is it really that concerning? Because these levels for a woman that's pregnant is normal. And because like a raised resting heart rate for a woman who's pregnant is normal, like your body is working to grow a baby. And he said, true. If she were pregnant, I wouldn't be as concerned. And I said, she is pregnant. And he said, she didn't say that to me. And I looked at her and I said, you didn't tell him that you were pregnant? She got real quiet. And I was like, why did you not tell him that you were pregnant? And she said, I forgot. And I was like, yeah, this is a different country, but even when you go in for like a general exam, if you went in for a sprained ankle, they would ask you if you're pregnant. And I've been through this procedure before. When I was 21 to 23, I was married and we were trying to have a kid. So like I have been through this process. Also, I'm doing tons of research and making sure that I'm fully informed and educated in each step of the way, from the moment that she told me to this moment. In every area, I want to be as prepared and informed as possible. And I'm like, you don't forget to tell. I'm like, you came here because you were having pains. Like this doesn't make sense. And at this point, I'm talking fast, and so the doctor is like having to speak Spanish so she can fully understand and speak English so I understand. And he sees me getting heated. Like, what do you mean she's not pregnant? I moved my whole fucking life out here. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, sir, he's like, stay calm. We'll do a pregnancy test. We'll see. We didn't do a pregnancy test when she came in here the first time. And so I'm like, all right. So we go get the blood work done. They said, be ready in 10 minutes. And we're sitting waiting, and I'm like, are you pregnant? And she's like, we'll get the test soon. And I'm like, no. You tell me now. Like, we need to be honest with each other. And she told me the night of the assault, she had lost the baby. And I was like, so you had a miscarriage? She said, yes. And I said, was there a lot of blood? because when you have a miscarriage, it's a traumatic thing. And she wouldn't answer me. And I'm sitting there in the waiting room with other people, and they're being like, I can't believe this. I can't believe this is happening. And I know there will be a lot of discussion of what's true and what's not true, especially when it comes to this part of the story, because it starts to unravel. And I'm going to share with you just what I experienced and what I heard. We get back into the doctor's office, and we sit down with the doctor, and he says she is not pregnant. And time stood still for a moment. Took a deep breath, and I said, well, was she ever pregnant? And he said, I cannot tell. All I can tell you is over the past 7 days, she has not been pregnant. And I was beside myself. And I said, I can't believe this. I moved my entire life. My family has changed their plans. My friends, my roommate, my company, my team, my employees, my clients, everything has changed and revolved around this. And now I find out that the baby's gone. And she never told me. And I looked at her and I said, this is the worst thing someone has ever done to me. And I stood up and I walked out. And I walked home. I stopped at a convenience store and I got myself a beer because I needed it. I didn't need it, but it felt necessary. When I got home, she was there. She said, she's like, I'm sorry, just don't leave. And I'm like, no, I'm like, I can't be with you. I love you dearly. I always will. I'll never stop. My love is unconditional. Real love is unconditional. Relationships, on the other hand, are conditional. I don't want to be with you. This level of betrayal is unacceptable. And she said, you said that you would be there for me no matter what happened to the baby. And I said, I made that promise to a woman that doesn't exist because you weren't pregnant when I made that promise. You also have a 4-year-old boy you didn't tell me about. The baby died and you didn't tell me before I got here. And like, in the back of my head was like, was there ever really a baby? I had seen a pregnancy test, and then she went out and got another pregnancy test. And I know that you can fake those things or buy bogus ones online, but you can't get shit shipped in Costa Rica. It doesn't work like that over here. And she's like, please no, you promised. And I was like, at some point, I can no longer be with you. You threatened to kill the baby. You threatened to leave with the baby and say that I would only have rights. The baby died. You didn't tell me. And this whole time that I've been here, the hours I spent talking to your belly, I was merely just having conversations with partially digested ceviche. That was humiliating. Not humiliating from anyone else, like when you get humiliated in front of a crowd or so. It was humiliating just to me. I'm like, I sat on the couch and laid on your belly and kissed your belly and cried. And you watched it, knowing that there was no baby there. Like, you're a monster. I moved my entire life out here. And all you can think about is yourself. And it's not totally obvious that I don't want to be with you. At some point, there's enough that you did that even you yourself would be like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'm going to go. And this isn't it. And she was like, no, don't leave. Don't leave. And she's like, I'm like, I'm going to arrange for a car to come get you and take you back home. I'm like, go pack your shit. All the gifts, all the stuff, like, keep it. I'm good. And I want to be done. And she's like, I'm not going to leave. And I said, well, then I'm going to leave. And you can stay here and do what you want. And I'll go get another place. I'm not going to be with you. And she started grabbing onto me. And I'm like, you do not have permission to touch me. I'm like, you do not have permission to touch me. Don't touch me. And she's just gripping onto me and crying and crying. And I'm like, no. In the middle of all of this, I have a workflow workshop that I need to do for a couple hundred people in 2 hours. So I thought. In reality, I had gotten a text message. It was like 8 minutes till the top of the hour from my buddy John, who brought all of these people for me to do this presentation for, 200 entrepreneurs. He said, hey, buddy, I'm ready when you are. And I'm like, oh, shit. After all of this, I had not missed a mark. I had not been late for anything. I had not made a single mistake. And I got the time wrong, which is the first time that has happened in years. And why did it have to be now? So I have to put on my game face and go serve the people that I'm meant here to serve. And I told her, I was like, I have to work. I have a presentation. We will talk about this later. Go pack your things. I have to do this. I can't miss out on this. We've been promoting for over a week for this thing. I have to do this. And so I put on my best foot forward or whatever. And I did the presentation. And I was so excited because we had just hired a sales team. And this was the first time I was going to do a presentation and then make an invitation for people to apply to join Level Up. And for my new sales guy to take the calls. And I was so excited because, when you're qualifying people to join your mastermind, like, you're inviting them into your family, into your day-to-day life. It's really important. And I did not want to hand that over to anybody because I didn't trust anyone but me to handle people's hearts and to truly recommend what's best for them. And our guy Will is just, oh my goodness, I couldn't even imagine a better person who has just the same heart. Just such a good culture fit, and he's such a good man, and he's so qualified and successful and loves our system, and it's just so good to people. And so I was really excited. And so I did this presentation, and then when I was done, I couldn't find her. The house is huge. It's, I don't know, 2,400 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 4 balconies. I looked everywhere, couldn't find her. I called my parents and I was like, the baby's gone. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. And I'm not averse to either of those, publicly or privately. And I didn't know where she went. And I'm like, she's gone. I don't know where she went. But she was hysterical. After I got off the phone, I just sat there and took it all in and went into the kitchen to hide the knives. So interesting that I told her 2 stories while we were on that walk that Saturday. And one was a woman lying to me about a baby and an abortion. And the other one was about a girlfriend that when I broke up with her, she got drunk and she also was looking for the knives or something sharp. And I had hid them because I had anticipated that may be a possibility. And so I'm having PTSD of both of these things. And I hid all the knives and the scissors and all of that. Eventually she comes out. She was sitting in our 3rd bedroom and on the balcony, which is on the all the way on the other side of the house. And got back into the loop. Don't leave. And I'm like, this is the way that it's got to be. I said, I'm not going to treat you poorly. I'm not going to do anything bad. I'm not even going to scold you, but I am going to say that I'm done. I'm done. Like I deserve better than this. I'm a good man. I've been honest with you this whole time. I could not have tried harder. I could have not been more excited. Almost any other man on the planet would not have handled this with the excitement and with the responsibility and with the precision and excellence as I did. And I don't deserve this. I deserve better. And I cannot trust you. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. She went into the kitchen and she started opening up the drawers. And I knew that I had hid the knives, but I couldn't remember where I hid them because it was just all happening so fast. She goes into our bedroom and goes into the bathroom and goes into her toiletry bag and pulls out a razor blade. The type of razor blades you use if you are a carpenter, or the type of razor blades that you'd put under your tongue in prison, like that type of razor blade. My first question is like, why the fuck do you have a razor blade? And my second thought was, oh shit, she's going to cut her wrists. And she pulled out the blade. She got it out of the package. And immediately I grabbed her wrist. She had it in her left hand. And I grabbed her left wrist so I could control the hand with the blade. And I tried taking it out of her hand, but it's a razor blade. So I was trying to grab the wrist, and then I'm like trying to gracefully take it out without me getting hurt. She had it between her index finger and her thumb. But then when I went to grab it, she gripped it in her hand like the way you would hold on to your last dollar if someone would try to take it from you. And she gripped it tight. And her hand immediately started to bleed out. And at this point, I was like, all right, this just got real on a whole nother level. So I then wrapped my arms around her while still controlling both of her wrists. I had both of her wrists now, and I put her in front of me. So we're both facing the same direction, like the way you would take a prom picture. That way, definitely this was not that context. And I started heading outside of our apartment to go get help. As she came out and was looking for the knives, on my watch, I hit the audio record button because I thought she's going, or it's possible that she may tell them that I tried to hurt her. And then my mind was like, I'm going to end up in Costa Rican jail. And I don't even know how that works. I know how US jail works to a certain extent, but not Costa Rican jail. And you don't want to be in either. But if I had to choose one, it'd be one where I speak the fucking language. So I take her out and she's resisting and she's crying and she's like, no hospitals. Don't take me to the hospital. And I'm like, we're going. And so as I'm taking her out, whoever I can make eye contact with in my building, I'm like, please, I'm like, get help. She's trying to kill herself. We're on the 4th floor, so we got to take the elevator. So I get in the elevator and there's just like blood on my shoes and on my clothes and on her clothes. And she had dropped the razor blade at this point. Once I grabbed her second wrist, because it was like evident she wasn't going to get away. I go down to security and I'm like, help, please call an ambulance. Please call an ambulance. They don't speak English. So I grab my phone and I'm trying to hold her 2 wrists with one hand while I'm like bear hugging her and trying to Google Translate the other part of it. Just trying to tell them what's happening through the translator. They're like, okay, we called the ambulance. We called the police. Now I'm sitting down with her on the ground, on the asphalt, and she's still trying to wiggle away and she's crying and she's like, no, like my baby's dead. My baby's dead. And a lot of other like very dramatic things. There's a million things that are going through my mind. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know what I'm doing here. And so I'm trying to voice message Miguel, but again, I'm speaking really fast. And so when English is your second language and you're talking really fast, they can't understand, and rightfully so, like, get it. And so I'm having to type and translate it while still trying to hold her. We're sitting on the ground right now, the way that you would sit like on a water slide or a sled, where she's in front of me and I'm just holding her and she's still resisting a ton. And I was like, Miguel, please come here. I'm like, things have gone sideways and upside down and whatever other disorienting ways it could go. And he's like, okay, bro, I'll be right there. It took like 35, 40 minutes for the ambulance to come. There was a part where she was struggling so hard and just exerting so much force that she fainted, but then woke up and was still going. And I'm waiting there and I'm holding her there while she's resisting. And it was so uncomfortable. It felt like I was there for 2 hours. And I'm like, baby, it's going to be okay. We're going to get you help. And in the middle of this, because I schedule everything on the hour, my brain is trained to see if it's 2:45. I know there's 15 minutes before I got to do something else. And I was like, oh shit, I have a call with a guy that I had been talking with probably like 2 or 3 times. His business wanted to join Level Up. And this was like our final call with his CFO. And so I'm just like so wired for just like the precision of execution of everything that I realize I have this call. And so I'm holding her and on Slack messaging my head coach, Sam, being like, this is an emergency. You need to take this call for me. And again, like for so many reasons, I'm so grateful for the system and the systems and the culture that I've built, because we're able to communicate so efficiently. When I text him and I say, you need to take this call, he has access to my calendar, which then has access to that Google call. We've got one password, so he's got access to my Zoom account, and just boom. I think there was probably like 8 minutes until the call. I'm able to make an emergency call, have things get taken care of, and everything just flow smoothly. throughout this whole process, if it wasn't for Level Up, the systems, the team, the culture, I'd have been so screwed. I always pitched the dream of having a business run like a well-oiled machine to give you the freedom for life to happen and for your business to scale. But what I realized, it's more than just growth. It's insurance that when shit hits the fan, everything you built doesn't fall apart because it's so well put together. So Sam was able to take the call. Miguel gets there and he's able to translate for me. And the police come and the ambulance come. And I'm like, I've got to go get her phone and her passport. Can I go up there? You have to make sure that she doesn't hurt herself. Like, the police are trying to ask me what's going on. They're asking for my information. And I'm saying to Miguel, like, am I going to go to jail? Like, he's like, no. He's like, you're going to be fine. And I was like, we need to get her help. She needs her hand is cut. It had stopped bleeding at this point. So it didn't like hit any like artery vein or anything like that. It was a surface wound, bloody nonetheless. After a lot of questioning and the ambulance taking a look at her, I was like, what hospital could we take her to? They're like, well, we're going to have to take her to the psychiatric hospital. And that's in San Jose, which at that time of day was going to take 2 hours to get there. And she's like, are you going to go to the hospital with me? And at this point, like, I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, in reality, I want to get her information and her stuff. And she's not my responsibility anymore. It's what I felt. I wanted to separate myself from the situation, but I was like, yes, I will go to the hospital with you. She's like, I don't want to go. And I'm like, baby, you're not well. You're not well. And when we were sitting there, I was like, have you been drinking? Because she smelled of beer. The paramedic said that she's not hurt enough for us to make her do anything. If she doesn't want to go, she doesn't have to go. And I was like, if you don't take her, she's going to kill herself. And they said, there's nothing we can do. I begged them. I was like, whatever it takes. I'm like, I'll go. I'll like, whatever. She's going to hurt herself. They're like, we're sorry. Can't do anything. And so they left. And I was like, okay. I'm like, well, we've got to pack your stuff up. I'm like, Miguel's going to take you home back to where she lived, which is 3.5 hour drive, something like that. Miguel was trying to talk her down, and she was not having it at all. And so we had to get the security guard and Miguel. And we brought her up to the place, to our home. The security guard and Miguel watched her, and I just started packing her stuff. And she's crying hysterically. And again, the bleeding had stopped, and I'm just frantically just pulling things off the hangers and just finding everything and just packing her stuff. I'm like, you have to go home. You need therapy. You need your family around you. But like, I can't be with you. Like, this is my line. My dad encouraged me, like, continue to be kind. And it's my nature, almost to a fault. Almost. Yeah. No, completely to a fault. She's like, do you forgive me? I was like, yes, I forgive you. And relationships are circumstantial. They are contingent based on the way you treat each other, right? Like, you could tell me you love me, and I could tell you that I love you, and you could tell me that you're never going to leave. But if I hit you, you might leave. And if I keep on hitting you, like, at some point, due to the circumstance, like, even though the love's unconditional, like, the relationships are conditional. So like, and this did not register. Nothing was registering. So we packed up all of her stuff, and the security guard was there. And there were times where I was going in different rooms and getting her stuff, and the security was like following me. I was like, do not let her out of your sight. She's gonna do something. She's gonna hurt herself. I made sure that I took out all the sharp things. When she went in the bathroom originally, she went and grabbed the scissors, and I took those from her. And then she got the razor blade. So I took all that stuff away and packed it all up. She called her sister on the phone, and then she's like, I have to go to the bathroom. We're like, oh, we're going to follow you in there. And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, you guys don't, but I'm going in there with her so I can go in there. And she realized that if her pants are down, those other two dudes are out of the picture. Like there's nothing, they're not coming into a girl that's got her pants down. She sat on the toilet for like 20 minutes and I was like, you need to get up. You need to go. And so I had to get her off the toilet and like pull her pants up, and she like resisted. As I was trying to pull them up, she just locked her elbow and wouldn't let her pants up. And I was like, you can't pull this. Like this is happening. You've got to go. I was like, Miguel's going to take you home. Everything's going to be like, okay, you're going to be safe. We got all of her stuff. And like she moved there. So there's a lot of shit. We get all of her bags out. The security guard took one bag down the elevator. I'm grabbing the other bags while Miguel is escorting her. He's holding her arms and she's somewhat compliant, but still kind of wiggling away. We're leaving the elevator door open and we were trying to close the door. She was like sticking her foot in the door so it couldn't close. She was like on the ground kind of sprawling, and then she kind of like gave up on it. As I'm bringing the last bag in, she gets away from Miguel and runs down the balcony and aggressively tries to jump over the edge of the 4th floor balcony to try to kill herself again. And I've never experienced someone so aggressively and with such certainty try to end their life. I grabbed her at the last second. She was more than halfway over. That fucked me up. Fucked me up real good. Every time that I walk back to my place, I find myself like counting the floors and seeing the drop. And there was no doubt about it. She was gone. Like it wasn't an attempt for attention. It was an attempt to jump. And I pulled it back over the edge, back into the balcony, and was going to be the one that was handling her, because otherwise I felt like she'd get away and do it again. The aggressiveness of which she tried to just not let that elevator close when we got her back into it was one of the most desperate attempts from a human in anything that I've ever seen. And I am a professional at dealing with trauma. I do retreats in foreign lands to resolve people's trauma and do deep healing. And I've seen some dark shit. I've had clients so deep in it that they die. My best friend's dead, who was a client, then became a business partner and was my best friend because he just didn't resolve his shit. He inadvertently killed himself. I've seen some shit, and this was the worst. We get her down, and I said, we had security holder, and I'm like, okay, let's get her in your car, Miguel, and take her. And she's like, no. She's like, my sister's coming to pick me up. I'm like, no, she's not. I'm like, your sister doesn't have a car. I'm like, just go with Miguel. I know this is hard. This is the way it's got to be. You got to go with Miguel. And she said, no, she's coming to pick me up. So we put her bags outside the gate on the lawn, and she wouldn't go with Miguel. So like her shit's on the lawn, her hand's bleeding. She just got exposed for lying to me about the death of our baby and got kicked out of our home. Once she was outside the gate, I'm like, what do I do? And Miguel said, he's like, Spencer, go back into your home. He's like, it's not your responsibility now. And I'm like, I know I need to make sure that she's okay. And he's like, man, she's not well. I'm like, I know. I'm like, but I need to make sure that she's okay. I don't hate her. I hate what she has done to me. So I went back in my house, and she left and walked down the road, not down the road, but like to the beach, which is our backyard. Miguel came up maybe like 10 minutes later, and I was sweating profusely because the whole thing was, I mean, I'm in the fucking jungle. I was essentially like wrestling her for the past 2 hours. I just like the strength that she had was remarkable, the stamina. And I said, she doesn't have any place to stay. Like, she needs to go home. So I gave Miguel money. I said, here's money to take her home tomorrow. And here's money for her to get a hotel tonight. I'm like, please go find her. Take her to a hotel. He took it, and I'm like, where I was texting him, like, where is she? I went back down, and the police had come back, and they had to like drive down the beach looking for her. I was afraid that she was just going to drown herself. Eventually, the police got her. Miguel took her, got her a hotel room. Of course, she's texting me, and I was out. The next day, she texted me and said, I still have stuff at the house. And I was like, no, you don't. Oh, no, pardon me. She was not texting me. I get a phone call from security saying she's on her way back up to your apartment. And I was like, no, it was a different security person. So they weren't informed. And I was like, no, she's not allowed up here. And luckily I had spoken to my mom, and she said, use the extra locks because it's a keypad to get in. So she knows the code. I hear her knocking. It was the first time that I was like scared for myself. This whole time, she never attempted to hurt me physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Oh yeah, she destroyed me. I'm in a billion little pieces spread across the ocean. Physically, no, but I was scared when I like heard her knocking. Then I said to Miguel, like, are you taking her home? He said, yes. He said she still has stuff in there. I'm like, ask her what the stuff is, because she's not going to tell you, because there ain't nothing in here. I got everything. She said there was a certificate and some earrings. And I was like, nope, I packed those. They're in the brown bag. Like, that's all there. Miguel starts to get her in the car and starts driving her home. I would like to say that it ended there. It did not. I thought it was done. What happened next was not as intense, but more damaging than I ever imagined. That night that it was done, I'd called Jason, my operator, CFO. I called him and I told him what happened. And I was like, fuck, just when I thought that I had it, like I won. I had everything I wanted. I was living in paradise in a beautiful home with a woman I absolutely adored, having a baby, doing a presentation for a couple hundred people. And like, today was supposed to be an amazing day, and it just could not be any worse. And he said to me, you always said that if there's something wrong, that I tell you immediately. But I have bad news for you. About what? It's about work. And I'm like, yeah, tell me, dude. Tell me. He's like, you did great in the presentation. My team gave me a lot of great feedback. Like, I don't know how you performed under those circumstances, but you did great. And I was like, yeah, I thought it was awesome. Like, people stayed on to the end. We had almost no drop off. Like, what's wrong? He's like, the link for people to book a call doesn't work. And I'm like, it's going to cost me 50 grand. Like, all right. Let's press the button. We know what to do when things screw up. Get a team on it. See if we could salvage it. When I said it got worse. That's not even the part I was talking about. Just talking about the next 2 days and then the aftermath. All of the training, all of the inner work, all of the precise language, my relationship with God, my experience in handling traumatic situations, my business being a well-oiled machine, having a great team, having clear communications, having clear expectations, prepared me to be able to handle this without my world falling apart. And now my world had fallen apart. If it wasn't for what I'd worked so hard to build, I would have lost everything. My business, my clients, my team, my everything. I've never felt so sure. There's like the explosion, and then there's the darkness, and what comes next is the deep darkness.
If this video resonated with you and you are ready to scale your growing business, then come join our free Facebook group by clicking the link below.